Thanks a lot for 3D Scanners to invite us as D3D to present our PolyWorks plugin D3D++ here at this PolyWorks training event UK. Well, first of all, from my side, I'm working as an application specialist for D3D and PolyWorks since 10 years now. Meanwhile, I'm responsible for customer solutions. This means that we are doing the process integration and the development of customized solutions in the PolyWorks environment, and especially for I'm responsible for aerospace, railway, and energy industries. Therefore, I will show you a case of application in the aerospace environment, especially from Airbus then. Okay, so presenting D3D, I would say, we are a company which has now an age of 25 years. We are around 50 employees. It's changing a bit at the moment, depending on the, I would say, the economic situation. But it's all over Europe. I would say it's about the same. Actually, we have two locations. Our headquarters is in Lindau at the Lake Constance, right next at the edge of the Alps, where you can see here this picture. This is the harbor of Lindau at the Lake Constance, and with a nice view to the Alps. Actually, I'm working at the headquarters in Lindau, and the funny thing is that I'm German, but I'm living in Austria. So for you as British, I would say it's a bit uncommon that I'm commuting every day from Austria to Germany by bicycle. Actually in the triangle of Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, as we can see, we are the exclusive PolyWorks distributor for those countries. Same as 3D Scanners for UK. We are doing the job for for Germany, for German-spoken countries. And what we do as well is that we develop and customize PolyWorks applications and process solutions, especially in my department. And that we do the development of PolyWorks plugin D3D++. Well, D3D++, you could say that is an essential plugin for PolyWorks integration into your enterprise processes. What it means, it's more like a toolbox. You can customize it as well. And then you can say, okay, let's integrate the PolyWorks plugin for interfaces to other software, especially for automation applications, as well as further functions developed in there. For example, if you have, there was the historical situation that we had some requests from customers, especially for PolyWorks functions in the European environment. They're a bit different to the American side, and then we said, okay, let's define a plugin where you have those functions then. So actually, at first, we got a request from different automotive companies like BMW, Volkswagen, or Mercedes-Benz, and they asked us to integrate an import module for standardized inspection plans. So they say, okay, they have their own file format, for example, BMW CSV or Volkswagen CSV, and they defined their inspection plans in those files, and they said, okay, let's import those informations into PolyWorks or to the PolyWorks inspector, and then actually, as a result, we have the whole inspection plan in the PolyWorks or in the inspector tree view. On the other side, we have then, after measuring the situation that we want to export the data or the results, so that they can export the data into their company's file formats. In a further step, we said, okay, now we have the CNC CMM plugin since almost 10 years now, and therefore we need some enhancements because actually, you know, if you want to carry out, for example, iterations in a CNC measurement process, it's not that easy to execute it in PolyWorks. And therefore, we said, okay, let's develop a solution by D3D++. And then we got a request or some further requests from different companies, from different customers. They said, okay, we want to extend, or we want to have a plugin which allows us to integrate further functions, for example, mathematical functions, and probably as well as APIs. So we defined interfaces for connecting or for communication to other software. And as a result, now we have a platform for well-established network protocols and automation processes. I will show you later on. That means that we are actually a platform, or we deliver a platform to communicate with other software, with other controllers, for example, by common network protocols. Yeah, a bit of an overview over this D3D++ plugin. Actually, what you need is PolyWorks, yeah, and the D3D++ plugin only works with the PolyWorks inspector, yeah. You know, there's no other possibility to use a plugin in PolyWorks environment without using the inspector. Therefore, we have the plugin, and there we have two different steps of, or packages of the plugin. On the one hand, we have the standard, and actually the standard license for D3D++. There we have probably those user interface improvements. So if you want to have special functions, like as I mentioned, those mathematical or ISO tolerances and so on, they are integrated into a user interface or toolbars. Then, as I mentioned, those import-export modules for probably, for example, BMW CSV import-export, and then basic CNC functions, as well as a file format parser. I will tell you later on about that. And then we have this Pro Automation license. There you have APIs and network protocols for communicating with automation applications, robots, and so on. And if you are using, for example, a duplex CNC, you can use advanced CNC toolkits. That means that you are able to perform, for example, iterations in your measurements. Meanwhile, we have, for example, this D3D++ standard and Pro Automation plugin. But meanwhile, we have further plugins developed with partners, hardware partners, or we see, okay, there's a potential to integrate more direct plugins, but therefore you have to install a single solution like this Photoneo plugin. I will tell you later on about that. And then if you use, for example, Zeiss PWeb, we are able to communicate with Zeiss PWeb, and on the other hand, on PolyWorks side, the data loop server. Therefore, we can perform an exchange between Zeiss PWeb and PolyWorks. Then we have, since for 1 year now, we have the possibility to perform gauging measurements with this gauging web plugin. It means that you have the possibility to measure directly in a browser, for example. And then sending the data to data loop or to the inspector. And as you might know now, it's virtual clamping. You will see in a further presentation or speech then by Autoform that we have this digital clamping plugin or virtual clamping plugin. But actually, at the moment, our focus is on the historical or basic D3D++ plugin. So what's the content of D3D++ standard? As I mentioned, those import-export of inspection plans and results. Then, actually what is interesting, for example, for you is this first article inspection report, therefore we have a function. Then, as we can do as well, is we can define user-friendly toolbars, we can customize them. Then, as I mentioned, those mathematical functions integrated by a library. Then we have a special function for ISO tolerances. You know, PolyWorks, there's more the focus probably on ASME as well as on ISO, but in Europe we have a special table with ISO tolerances, and we can integrate the tolerances then. And then actually what is a bit of my thing is this file parsing. So we have the possibility to integrate or to read and to write XML files as well as JSON files in a very fast way, I would say. And then you can see the overview of our CNC standard functions. For example, if you want to measure the temperature of the CNC CMM, there's no direct possibility in PolyWorks, so integrated sensor connection. And then, you can perform, for example, monitoring of the sensor system and orientations as well protecting your sequences and your configuration. So this was the standard. There's this license model, and then a step higher, there's this Pro Automation license or plugin. And therefore, for example, concerning CNC functions, we have the possibility of this sequence master toolkit. That means that you have, for example, the possibility to integrate more functions than those in the sequence editor than you probably know about. For example, iterations, and then probably performing a step which was performed earlier. And so you can jump from different steps to an earlier step, for example, especially for iterations. And then in most cases, actually this is probably used for duplex CMM tasks. And then we have different interfaces. For example, we can connect or communicate with other controllers, software, machines by TCP/IP protocol. We have the possibility to integrate serial port interface. That means, for example, if you use such an RS-232 protocol, as well as, for example, the integration of further gauges, which communicate by serial port interface. And what's, I would say, at the moment is the best technology. What we want to push at the moment is this MQTT interface. If you have heard about that, meanwhile, a lot of gauges can communicate by this interface. I will show you an application case later on about that. And then what's another good topic is this OPC-UA data exchange standard. That's a bit of my stuff I'm doing at the moment. Then we got a request to integrate this RoboDK interface. Therefore, we can integrate, I think, I'm not quite sure, about 200 different robot CAD models, for example, to communicate by this RoboDK interface with the machine, with the robots then. And then we developed a MIR toolbar. That means we are able to communicate with an AGV. So we say, okay, the AGV has to be positioned at a special position, and then let's get the status back from this AGV and then say, okay, we will perform a measurement with a device which is mounted onto the MIR. I will show you this case later on as well. And last but not least, we can communicate by web service interface. That means we have the possibility to connect or by HTTP protocol and so on. Well, first of all, I want to give a deeper insight into some D3D++ programming functions. Actually, as I mentioned, it's possible to perform that in D3D++ standard license. Sorry. Actually, this was not right. It's the additional interfaces for automation. It's for the Pro Automation license. So we have this OPC-UA data exchange standard and the MQTT protocol, and therefore we can connect to robotics and PLC systems, for example. What is integrated into the standard license is this extension of command library by XML and JSON parser interface. So, for example, if you have an XML file for configuration, or on the other side a JSON file, you can integrate XPath as a code into PolyWorks macro scripts. So therefore, we integrated an interface to work with XML and JSON in a fast way. Then to work faster with PolyWorks macro scripts, for example, we have the possibility to extend the macro script library. As you might know, is that we have those native PolyWorks commands, but what we can do is we can develop PolyWorks macro scripts and say, okay, let's integrate them by D3D++ as a D3D++ command. Therefore, I would say it's a generic and scalable approach for macro script programming. So you can develop your own native PolyWorks commands. You can execute them by the macro command history or by the macro editor and say, okay, let's define your own macro function, and you can integrate it into different other macro scripts. Actually, this macro script, which is then a command, is very easy to integrate it into the user interface or into the toolbars of the inspector. And what's possible as well, that you can call those functions or those commands then by network protocols for example, as OPC-UA. Here is an example how it works. Actually, we integrate such a header, and then you have the possibility to call this new macro command by, for example, the command history. So as you can see here, we have the header, and all those information in the header, in this XML header, is integrated into then those possible or arguments which can be used for this macro command. Yeah, here is an application example of OPC-UA, especially from aerospace industries. So what we did is, this is a development center for Airbus here, and the aim is that they use two of those HEVs, one with a cobot and another one with a laser tracker, and then this laser tracker I will show you here. You have two HEVs here, one with a cobot and a laser scanner. It's just an AS1 from Hexagon, and the other one is with a laser tracker, for example, an AT960 from the Hexagon. And we have on the other side we have a measurement computer with PolyWorks, and PolyWorks is connected or communicating with the scanner and the laser tracker. And on the other hand, we have a PLC which is controlling everything, which is performed by the robots, for example, the HEVs and the cobot. Yeah. So what we have to do now is that PolyWorks and the PLC are communicating or connected, and this is performed by an OPC server. So actually, the PLC is controlling everything. It writes, for example, a value to the OPC server, and then PolyWorks gets the value, it reads it, so it says, okay, let's start the scan, for example, or let's finish the scan, or let's perform PolyWorks methods, for example, alignments, and so on. And therefore, it is possible that PolyWorks is controlling the position, or actually the connection between PolyWorks and the laser tracker is controlling the position of the cobot with the laser scanner. So PolyWorks gets an information or is performing some functions. Then it says, okay, my status is ready. It writes a value to the OPC server. And on the other hand, the PLC gets the information that PolyWorks is ready, so we can perform, for example, a new task, or we can say, okay, let's drive the HEVs to a new position, and then let's restart the scan from another position. Then some further examples of applications in MQTT environment, web service, and further APIs. Therefore, as you can see here, an example from BMW. And therefore, we have another HEV. On the HEV, there is a cobot, and the cobot has mounted a structured light scanner, or actually two. And then we have a plug-in by the scanner that we can, for example, here scan this car body. So this is an example from BMW in Munich. I will show you now how it works. So it was a consortium of different companies. Oh, next slide. So therefore, actually, where we want to perform our measurements in PolyWorks Inspector, then we have this HEV. On the HEV there is this cobot, and the cobot has a double or duplex structured light scanner. Then we need different plugins or applications in the PolyWorks Pro Automation environment. And for example, PolyWorks or the D3D Pro Automation is communicating or connected to those other softwares. For example, the software of the cobot and the software of the HEV, as well as those two scanners. In case of that, the connection between PolyWorks and this cobot is by a web service or REST API, and on the other hand, on this for the HEV, it's connected by MQTT. And then we have, as I mentioned before, in an earlier page or slide, that there's this API or a direct plugin for this PhotoNeo scanner. So now, as you can see here, we use different interfaces for network protocols. For example, the MQTT protocol is setting a position, or PolyWorks sets a position, and it sends the information to the MQTT interface of the HEV. And then the HEV is positioned and says, okay, I'm at the right position, and I can send you my positive status, for example, that the task is performed, so that PolyWorks can do another method, perform another method, for example, that the cobot on the HEV is positioned and gets the status that it is in the right position as well. And then actually the PolyWorks inspector sends an information to the API of the two scanners that the scan sequence can start. So the scanning is executed, and then after the scan, or actually the PolyWorks this PhotoNeo plugin allows us that the data is directly streamed into PolyWorks or into the inspector. Yeah. Then actually we have some further plug-in solutions, as I mentioned before. As I mentioned, this size PWeb connector, so transferring results and data from PolyWorks inspector to data loop, or in the other direction. Then we have the sketching web interface, so that it allows to measure in web browsers by, for example, calipers. And last but not least, which is the latest development, is this application of digital clamping. Hopefully I could give you a good insight into this D3D++. So if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask me. As well as afterwards, if you want to ask me, we can discuss later on in the lobby. And hopefully, what's the aim actually, that we see the potential of D3D++ in the UK market. So thanks a lot.